Hi, everybody. Yeah, I know it's been over 2 weeks since I last did a movie review. I know a lot has gone on since. I had to attend a wedding. I had to get new shelves put in my room because I had a lot of clutter and I needed to fix it all up, which I thought was pretty cool. It did take me. I'll eventually post it in a video review in a video eventually, so I'll definitely have to show you what I've done to my room, which is pretty cool. And and of course, today's my birthday. I am now 36. Happy birthday to me. So, I was just scrounging around trying to find a possible movie to talk about, and for some strange reason, I decided to pop this one in the other night, and I can't help but. And by the way, there is no Blu ray, it's only DVD. There is no Blu ray release as of yet. It would be nice if they actually did put one out soon, but I'm going to talk about Stephen King's The Langoliers. Langoliers is a 1995 miniseries that debuted on ABC, and it's based off the novella of the same name, also by Stephen King, which I'll get into eventually here. For anybody who, The Langoliers, like I said, it was a basically the gist of the story is American Pride Flight 29, an airplane, is flying, and it just ends up crossing through an aurora borealis over. It's basically is flying from LAX to Boston, and 10 passengers aboard the plane suddenly decide to, I guess take a nap, fall asleep, and when they wake up, they discover that everybody aboard the plane has mysteriously vanished, but with an actual trace because all the people have vanished and they left all their personal belongings behind, like purses, change, watches, and also things that came from inside people, surgical pins, pacemakers. Yeah, people have just mysteriously vanished, like they're gone. No, but not a trace to be found. And of course, the 10 passengers, are all random people. Like they don't even know, they had never even met each other. And, they basically come from different backgrounds. Like one of them's actually an airline pilot, one's a school teacher, one's a mystery writer, one's a businessman who might be a bit psychotic. One is a little girl that's actually blind, and there's a British assassin. So yeah, we've got a pretty interesting motley crew of so-called survivors. The pilot takes control of the plane, and he manages to land it. But instead of going to Boston like they normally should have, they decide to go to Bangor, Maine. Maine. If anybody's playing a Stephen King drinking game, might as well, because that's basically Stephen King likes to set most of his stories, the majority of them, in Maine. Any small town in Maine, essentially, because that's where he lived a good bit of his life. I don't know if he's still living there or not, but that's where he set a lot of his stories. So they decide to land at Bangor International Airport, but after they land the plane, they discover that the situation hasn't gotten any better. The airport is completely deserted, which is so weird because an airport is always busy regardless of the hour. You could walk into an airport at maybe 3 in the morning, you'll still find a bunch of people there. So they decide to investigate, even though Dinah, the little blind girl, is essentially saying, no, we shouldn't investigate because there's nothing there to find. So they tried the food there. The food has no taste. They tried the carbonated drinks. They have no flavor. The sound fails to reverberate. It's almost as if time has completely frozen still. But Dinah, despite not seeing, is able to hear that a ominous, dreadful presence is heading right for them, hell-bent on their destruction. And of course, Craig Toomey, the psycho businessman, may know a thing or two about these creatures, these Langoliers, as they come barreling toward our small group of survivors. And the mystery writer comes to the conclusion that they have hopped a short distance into the past because they went through a so-called time rip. And in order to get back to their own time, they have to go back to the time rip before these creatures come and ultimately destroy them. That's essentially the plot of the Langoliers. Yeah, there's a lot there's a lot more that I'm sure I could explain more of, but I'd like to try to explain the plot without having to read anything. I mean, I could have just read the back here. I mean, could have read the whole thing. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I could have just explained it all without having to read the whole back here. I mean, more or less. The miniseries, like I said, it debuted in 1995 on ABC, which is also the same channel that aired It and The Stand. I'd like to say Golden Years did, but I looked it up. It was actually CBS that aired Golden Years. That's another miniseries that Stephen King did. I'll eventually get into that one, no doubt. I do like this little critic quote here. When the monsters finally show up, the visceral horror they unleash is nothing compared to the intellectual thrills provided by the Langoliers. I first heard about the Langoliers when I watched the VHS of The Stand. It actually showed a little promo of the miniseries before The Stand began. Now, of course, I didn't watch any of these miniseries growing up as a kid, like It. I mean, obviously, I was only 3 when It came out. Stand, I pretty much ignored it. And then, of course, Langoliers, same thing. I pretty much ignored it. But I am ready to talk about, like, you know, the things that most people are obviously familiar with. The Langoliers was directed by Tom Holland. Tom Holland was the same filmmaker that made classic 80s thrillers like Fright Night and Child's Play. And he also directed another Stephen King adaptation. A year after The Langoliers, he did Thinner. But it's also interesting on the back cover here, the DVD. I like how it has the listing of all the listings of some of the cast members, not a lot of them, but the majority of them. Oh yeah, I like here executive producers Richard P. Rubenstein and Mitchell Gallen, which by the way, I like how it's in like encased in this like rectangle here. Based on the novella 4 Past Midnight by Stephen King, but teleplay and directed by Tom Holland! Why is his name so huge on the back here? I mean, that's about as big as Stephen King's name on the front here. But Stephen King on the front. But, Tom Holland! And no, not the same Tom Holland that played Spider-Man. No, yes, their names are the same, but different people. I just had to get that out because I did watch the Nostalgia Critic review of the Langoliers, and he actually pointed that same exact thing out, which I was like, really? Why is his name so huge on the back? I don't know. Maybe you can say something to Artisan Entertainment, the company that actually put out the DVD for the Langoliers. I have no idea, because that is just so weird. The series got mostly a mixed response by critics, essentially. As I've said, The Langoliers is based on the novella of the same name, which is from the anthology 4 Past Midnight, which I happen to have here. 4 Past Midnight is it's basically a series of anthologies that Stephen King wrote, and The Langoliers is actually the first one. Well, that's pretty cool. It literally almost is... Let me see if I can hold it up right here. Yeah, that's pretty close, resembling the events of the book. The novella itself is about roughly a little over 200 pages. So yeah, it actually there's a lot of material in there to weave through, essentially. So yeah, I'm definitely going to get into the more memorable aspects of the miniseries, I'm just going to call it movie from now on. Miniseries, yeah, movie just sounds quicker to say. Of course, the one thing that I'm sure for anybody that's has actually seen the Langoliers, one of the things that a lot of people definitely point out is the overacting by some of the characters. Now, without all that, all that said, I will say Bronson Pinchot, who played Craig Toomey in the movie, the psycho businessman, he definitely gives a standout performance that is just so over the top, and he literally belches and yells almost every line he has in the movie. And I guess Tom Holland likes doing like severe close-ups of the actor's face. Literally, he has lines like, One of my favorite lines in the whole movie that he says is when after they land the plane and the pilot's trying to talk him down and try to calm him down, and then Toomey's like, "Time! What the hell do you know about time? Ask me about time! Ask me! Time is short, sir!" Now, I didn't emphasize that because that's exactly how he acts in the movie. Oh my god. Then, of course, people remember him as Balky from Perfect Strangers, the show he did back in the 80s, which maybe is the reason he got cast in the role of Craig Toomey. Who knows? But it's actually pretty funny. But the cast in the movie is actually pretty good. You got David Morse, who the following year would be in The Rock, and he went on to appear in another Stephen King adaptation, The Green Mile. Dean Stockwell was probably best known for Quantum Leap, and who had recently passed away, which is a shame. Rest in peace, Dean. And he worked a few times with David Lynch on Dune and Blue Velvet, on a couple of his movies. Frankie Faison, who appeared in a few movies. He appeared in at least, I think he was in Silence of the Lambs, I believe. And he also appeared in another Stephen King adaptation, Maximum Overdrive. Mark Lindsay Chapman, not to be confused with the murderer of John Lennon, who was Mark David Chapman. But the name sounds familiar. Mark Lindsay Chapman, he's the British guy. Actually, that's him right there. The year out, I think right after he made The Langoliers, he got picked up by James Cameron to work on Titanic, actually. He was one of the officers aboard the ship. He was the one blowing the whistle. For anybody that didn't know who he was in Titanic, there's like the scene where Thomas Andrews is walking around the deck and the crew is trying to get the lifeboats off their hindles and trying to get them ready to lower down. And when Andrews is walking up to him, he's like, "Mr. Wire, where are the passengers?" And he's like, "Overall, back inside. Too damn cold and noisy for them." Yeah, that's him. Let's see here. Baxter Harris, I've seen him in a couple of movies. I know the year Mark Lindsay Chapman appeared in Titanic, Baxter Harris appeared in, he actually appeared in Home Alone 3 that same year. Richard P. Rubenstein has been the executive producer or producer for several Stephen King film adaptations, many of them actually. I believe he also executive produced The Stand as well. Patricia Wedig, I know she's been in a ton of things. As for the rest of the crew, I have no idea. Tom Holland even appeared. He actually makes a cameo in the movie too, right near the very beginning. And of course, Stephen King even cameos too. I mean, it's like it's so easy not to miss him. I mean, it's like as soon as you see him, you know it's him. So that's pretty cool. This is also one of the very few Stephen King adaptations to actually get a PG-13 at the MPAA. Not many of Stephen King adaptations got a PG-13. There's only like at the time, there was only like maybe a handful, like probably not even a handful. Like I know Cat's Eye received a PG-13, and that's, as far as I know, that's the only one that did. But almost every other King adaptation was rated R. Except for, for the miniseries, it got a PG-13. Now, I am probably prepared to talk about the one thing that, it's fairly obvious, the one thing a lot of people know that is this movie is so memorable for, and that's for its CGI visuals. Which, okay, at the time, I'm sure for 1995, they were, okay at best. But today, yeah, it's fairly obvious they don't hold up. But one of the biggest problems of this movie is the payoff that it had. The Langoliers themselves do not show up until roughly 2 hours into the movie, a little over 2 hours. And when they do show up, it is somewhat of a letdown of epic proportions, to say the least. It is so underwhelming when they show up. Unfortunately, there's no, I wish there was a picture I could show you, or, like I said, I don't know, unfortunately there isn't here, so. But when they do show up, it's rather underwhelming. But the build-up to their show-up is definitely suspenseful, because you don't even know what's coming. But unfortunately, when it does show up, it's like, are you serious? But for people that have yet to see the miniseries, no doubt the movie, have no doubt, you know, I'm sure they're like, oh yeah, when they see the effects, they're gonna be like, yeah, this is some of the absolute worst. Definitely ranks up. I would definitely probably put this on the top 10 movies with the worst visual effects by far, hands down. And many of the Stephen King miniseries that have aired on TV, many of them that did, many of them do have effects that, yeah, don't hold up. Like, you know, It and The Stand have a couple of effects that don't exactly hold up. Langoliers, definitely. Even the Shining miniseries had some not so great effects either. But they were, you know, tolerable at the time. But, you know, over time, they've definitely not aged well. So those are the two main things many people do remember the most from the movie is sorry, I keep saying miniseries. That's two things people remember the most from the movie are the overacting and also the not so great visual effects are cheesy at best. But I will say the Langoliers has an interesting concept to it. It really does. Yeah, a friend of mine told me that he said that he may have seen a Twilight Zone episode that resembles the Langoliers a lot, and maybe that's where Stephen King got his inspiration for the Langoliers. Who knows? It's possible. As I've said early in the review, unfortunately there is no Blu-ray available. It's only the DVD. There is a second DVD available, The Langoliers. It was released by CBS and Paramount, and supposedly that one has a slightly better transfer on it, but I've actually seen what the cover art looks on the DVD, and it looks terrible. This is actually more appropriate because this looks, you know, definitely looks far more appropriate. So The Langoliers was released on DVD through Artisan Entertainment, and which, by the way, is a defunct company now because Artisan has since been bought and now is owned by Lionsgate. So Lionsgate pretty much owns Artisan. So here's the DVD. Langoliers is actually one of the first movies I actually did purchase on DVD with my own money. I actually bought this in a 5-movie collection set, which came with 4 other Stephen King film adaptations. It came with Cujo, Golden Years, The Stand, and also Thinner. And this was actually the first time I ever got to see the Langoliers. Was on DVD actually. So yeah. On VHS, it would have been 2 tapes, but yeah, the DVD, I'm amazed that they managed to cram the entire 3-hour miniseries onto 1 disc. That's pretty impressive, to say the least. The video quality on the disc, well, it's not great. But then again, it's Artisan. Artisan is kind of hit or miss with some of their DVDs. I mean, they're like, you know, they're either good. Very few of their titles were actually really good. Like Terminator 2, the Ultimate Edition, is definitely one of Artisan's best releases. But this is probably close to being one of their worst. Because the entire movie is crammed onto 1 disc, which means the video quality is not going to be the best. And it really isn't. It's in full frame, 1:3:3:1 aspect ratio, since it was made for television. Obviously, it was going to be shot with, you know, the television ratio cameras, which, you know, is appropriate. So the picture quality is, yeah, it's kind of up and down for many shots. It's rather grainy throughout the whole picture, but I think it fits the movie very well for what it is, especially since it was a miniseries made for TV. I would say out of 5 stars for the video, I'd say probably maybe a 3 at the best. My opinion, probably a 3. As for the audio, it's presented in 2.0 stereo, which, again, sounds appropriate. In some ways, I think the audio sounds a little better than the video does, especially, at least the dialogue. You don't have to worry about the dialogue coming out short or whatever. So I would say the audio is definitely better than the video in many areas. So I would say for 5 stars for the audio, I'd say 3.5 at the best. As for bonus features, we actually do get a decent amount up here. Full screen version, 2.0 stereo, digitally mastered, scene access, interactive menus. Wow, what a list of supplemental material. So what? No commentary, no behind the scenes, no still images. No, unfortunately, this disc is as bare bones as it can possibly get. What bonus features? There are none. There's nothing. Oh well, we get this little paper sleeve here, which has a listing of all the chapters in the DVD. There's a lot of chapters too, 49 of them, by the way. And on the back here is basically like this little, it's like a list of other movies available on DVD through Artisan Entertainment, so. Which many of these, by the way, are, many of these are actually really hard to get a hold of, by the way. I actually own a few of these, but like I said, they're very hard to get a hold of. And if anybody owns them, I couldn't even imagine how expensive they must be. But either way, yeah, that's the DVD. Yeah, the extras obviously gets a goose egg 0 because there's nothing. There's no extras whatsoever. So yeah, the DVD presentation of the film is not really one of the best, but unfortunately it'll have to do for now until a possible high-def release comes out. I don't expect a Blu-ray of the Langoliers to come into the near future anytime soon because, well, what about The Stand? It got a Blu-ray release. Well, the only reason it got a Blu-ray was because of that new miniseries of The Stand that debuted not too long ago. And that's the reason why the original miniseries got a Blu-ray. As for the Langoliers, well, it would be nice if maybe like Shout Factory would pick it up. I mean, that would be awesome. Or maybe CBS or Paramount, because they put out The Stand on Blu-ray, and Langoliers could actually use a decent high-def release. That would be nice. But until then, we got this DVD here, or you got the one by CBS Paramount. So either way, if you can, whichever DVD you can find that's cheaper, I'd say go for it. But I'm going to stick with the Artisan version for now until a proper Blu-ray or a better high-def release comes along. Like I said, the video is mediocre. The video is fairly okay. Don't expect a crisp-looking transfer of the movie. Don't. But it's appropriate for what it is, so that's why I only gave it a 3-star rating. The audio is definitely better. Like I said, 3.5. The bonus features, like I said, there's nothing. I guess the one good extra is the fact that at least you don't have to swap discs. I mean, the entire movie's on one DVD, which is pretty impressive there. But of course, that's the reason why the video quality is not that great, because the entire thing is crammed onto one disc. But still, I mean, at least you don't have to worry about changing or flipping it, at least. So that's pretty cool. I'll give it that. So yeah, if you haven't had a chance to check out the Langoliers, yeah, give it a try. It's actually a lot of fun. I mean, it definitely keeps your attention. It has some interesting ideas. Like I said, I like the concept of it. I think it is rather interesting, and it definitely has a bit of a creepy aspect. But be ready to be let down, because there is a payoff that unfortunately doesn't exactly, it's not exactly a one that's going to meet your expectations. Let's put it that way. But overall, I think it has an interesting concept, and you should definitely give it a try. Is it scary? In a way, yes, somewhat. But either way, I think it's worth a look. Yeah, it got mostly mixed opinions when it debuted. Like, it wasn't as highly praised as The Stand was. And again, that was kind of a tough miniseries to look up to in the footsteps of The Stand's release. You know, The Langoliers coming out the year after The Stand premiered, so it is kind of hard to follow in its footsteps. But honestly, yeah, give it a try. I'd definitely give it a shot. So, this concludes the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I will continue to do more videos like this in the days to come. I hope. So until then, everybody take care and be safe. And yeah. And if you like this content, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel, because like I said, I will be putting new videos out occasionally whenever I can. So everybody take care and be safe.